the alien general, Kralvar, stood at the front of an interstellar assembly of the galaxy's most powerful and respected military leaders. His voice echoed through the chamber, cutting through the tension in the air. He spoke with a sense of superiority. His deep, resonant tone meant to instill fear and awe in those who listened. He was a Tyrak, a warrior race known for their unyielding strength, their advanced weaponry, and their ruthless conquests. To them, the galaxy was a playground, and they ruled it with an iron fist. Every species, every race had bent to their will except one. Humanity, he began, his words dripping with contempt, is weak, a race of cowards too afraid to engage in the true politics of power. You hide behind your primitive technology and fragile bodies. Your pathetic attempts at diplomacy are nothing more than a smoke screen to mask your fear. The room fell silent, the alien leaders of the Galactic Alliance watching with varying expressions of disinterest or amusement. They had all seen the humans' attempts at galactic diplomacy, their lack of spacefaring technology, their inability to project military power beyond their small corner of the galaxy. It was no surprise that the Tyrak Dominion viewed them as insignificant. The humans had been content to remain isolated, refusing to engage in the interstellar conflicts that defined the greater galaxy. They seemed content to stay in their corner, keeping their distance from the mighty empires that ruled the stars. Kralvar's eyes swept the room, gauging the reaction of the onlookers. The humans are a breed of fear. They are unwilling to stand against the might of the Tyrak Dominion. They have no place in the galaxy. And so I issue a challenge, a duel. One warrior, your best against mine. A collective murmur rippled through the assembly. This was not the way of the Tyrak. Their military prowess was built on overwhelming force, not honor-bound combat. But Kralvar didn't care. His pride demanded it. He had made his reputation by humiliating species in the galaxy, and now it was humanity's turn to experience the same fate. Send your champion, he continued. Send anyone you choose. But understand this, no matter who you send, it will not be enough. Your weakness is ingrained in you, and I will break you. His words were a threat, a guarantee that no human could stand up to him. Not in a duel, not in any fight. As Kralvar finished speaking, the room fell into a heavy silence. The alien leaders, most of whom had already written off humanity, exchanged glances, certain that the humans would back down. They couldn't possibly believe they could send someone to challenge a Tyrak warrior. But then, the unexpected happened. The human representative, a man named General Marcus Lang, stepped forward. His voice was calm, measured, but resolute. We will accept your challenge, he said, his words cutting through the tension like a blade. Kralvar raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering in his gaze. You accept the challenge? You are a coward, Lang. You speak of strength, yet you cower in the shadows of the true powers of the galaxy. He sneered. Your people have nothing to offer. Lang's expression never wavered. We don't need to be the strongest. We don't need the most advanced technology. What we have is something you don't understand. Resilience. The ability to fight, to survive, no matter the odds. The alien leaders of the Galactic Alliance were stunned. They had expected the humans to falter, to back down. But Lang's words had ignited something in the air. A shift had occurred. Kralvar had misjudged humanity. Very well, Kralvar spat. You will send one soldier. One pathetic, insignificant human. If you think you can stand up to me, then so be it. But make no mistake. This will be your end. Lang stood firm. We will send just one soldier, as you asked. And that soldier will fight with everything they have. With that, the challenge was accepted. The alien leaders of the Galactic Alliance exchanged uncertain glances. They had underestimated the human resolve, but they still believed the odds were insurmountable. They believed the Tyrak Dominion was unbeatable. They believed this would be a display of human failure. But General Lang's final words echoed in their minds as they left the room. We don't need an army. We only need one soldier with the will to fight. And so the stage was set. The alien general's mockery of humanity's cowardice had stirred something deeper, something the galaxy would soon come to understand. Humanity was not cowed by strength. Humanity was defined by something much more dangerous. Captain Elise Carter was chosen to represent humanity. At just 5 feet 6 inches, she was far from the towering presence of the Tyrak champion, Gorath. She lacked the physicality that most of the galaxy's warriors admired, and her weapons were far less advanced. Her exosuit was light, designed for agility rather than strength, and her arsenal consisted of a small sidearm and a tactical blade. None of the Tyrak or the other alien species understood why she was the one chosen. In their eyes, she was an unlikely hero, a mere human among giants. But they didn't see what was beneath the surface. They didn't see the mind that had been honed through years of battlefield experience, the tactical genius that set her apart. Elise was a specialist in asymmetrical warfare, trained to turn the tables in situations where the odds were stacked against her. It was this mind, not her body, that would win this battle. Her training had not prepared her for a typical war. It had prepared her for the impossible. She had studied every battle, every weakness, every strength of the Tyrak Dominion. She knew the stakes, but she also knew what she was capable of. The other humans, those watching from Earth, had their doubts, but Elise was resolute. She had something more than physical strength. She had determination. The battlefield, however, was a different story. The Tyrak had chosen a desolate planet with harsh, unforgiving conditions. The ground was littered with volcanic craters, jagged rocks, and treacherous ravines that seemed to stretch on endlessly. The weather was hostile, with acidic rain that could burn through most materials. This was no simple arena. It was a place designed to test the limits of endurance. And in the eyes of the Tyrak, it was the perfect place to crush any human hope. Gorath, the Tyrak champion, stood across from her, a towering figure clad in heavy, advanced armor. His weapon, a massive energy blade, crackled with lethal power. He was built for combat, bred for battle. His muscles rippled under his armored suit, his eyes burning with the arrogance of a warrior who had never been defeated. He was the picture of brutality, a force of nature that had crushed hundreds of opponents. In the eyes of his people, he was unbeatable. And yet, the human before him, Elise, stood unwavering, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the storm of violence that was about to unfold. The alien spectators watching from their distant stations were skeptical at best. They couldn't understand why the humans had chosen someone so physically unassuming. They knew nothing of Elise's mind, her strategy, or her will. To them, it seemed like an insult to send someone like her into the field against such a beast of a warrior. But Elise had already decided how this battle would go. She didn't need brute strength to defeat Gorath. She needed to outthink him, outmaneuver him, and use the terrain to her advantage. She surveyed the battlefield, noting every rock, every crater, and every vulnerable point in the environment. Her mind clicked into gear, rapidly calculating every possible scenario. She knew that she wouldn't survive in a head-on confrontation with Gorath. But if she could keep him distracted, if she could force him into a position where his size and strength became liabilities, she might just have a chance. The alien general and his army of followers might have been the most feared in the galaxy, but they had overlooked one thing: the power of a human mind that refused to be broken. Elise's mind raced with calculations, her focus absolute. The Tyrak champion might be stronger, but strength alone wasn't enough. Gorath, for all his might, was a creature of habit, a brute who relied on his overwhelming force to win battles. He underestimated his opponents, and that was where Elise would strike. She wouldn't need to fight him directly. She would fight him through his own arrogance. It was his overconfidence that would be his undoing. He believed the fight was already won. He didn't see the human resolve burning in her chest. While the aliens whispered among themselves, wondering if humanity had made the right choice, Elise was already working. She had a plan, simple but deadly. The acid rain began to fall, the heat of the ground rising in oppressive waves. But Elise remained focused. She had no fear. Fear was for those who lacked conviction, and humanity was a species defined by its capacity to endure, no matter the cost. She glanced over at Gorath, who seemed to think the fight was a formality. and inevitability. He had no idea what he was up against. Elise wasn't here to be a mere spectacle. She was here to prove something. And as the rain fell harder, the ground beneath her feet began to crack with the weight of what was to come. The stage was set. It was time to make her move. The battle began with an explosion of movement as Gorath charged toward Elise, his massive form barreling forward like an unstoppable juggernaut. The ground trembled beneath his feet as he swung his energy blade, a devastating arc that could easily cleave through most defenses. Elise, however, was ready. She didn't try to outrun him, knowing his sheer size and speed would outmatch her. Instead, she darted to the side, her exosuit enhancing her agility and allowing her to sidestep the massive blow with inches to spare. Elise's focus was razor-sharp, her mind calculating every move with military precision. She knew that Gorath's strength was his greatest asset, but it was also his greatest weakness. Every time he swung that massive weapon, he left himself vulnerable, open for a split second to a counterattack. He was a brute, reliant on power and overwhelming force. Elise's strategy was simple: use his own momentum against him, outlast him, and wear him down. As Gorath recovered from his missed strike, he roared in frustration, his eyes blazing with rage. His next swing came even faster, and Elise was forced to roll to the ground, narrowly avoiding the blow. She sprang to her feet immediately, taking advantage of his overcommitment. She struck quickly, aiming for the exposed joints in his armor with her blade. It wasn't enough to break through the thick metal, but it was enough to slow him down, just for a moment. Gorath snarled, clearly irritated by Elise's speed and evasiveness. He swung again, this time more erratically, relying on raw power rather than precision. Elise ducked under the blade, moving swiftly to the side, and then disappeared into the rocky terrain. She wasn't trying to engage him head-on. She was making him chase her, wearing him out. The terrain was her ally, and she knew it better than Gorath ever would. She led him through the jagged, unstable ground, where the acid rain was intensifying, making it more difficult for the Tyrak to maintain his footing. His heavy armor, designed for straight combat, slowed him down, and Elise took advantage of every misstep. She'd planted EMP mines earlier, knowing that the energy-based armor Gorath wore was susceptible to electromagnetic pulses. As he charged past one of the mines, Elise activated it. A sharp pulse rippled through the air, and Gorath staggered, momentarily disoriented. His armor systems flickered, and he was forced to pause to recalibrate. This was the opening Elise had been waiting for. She lunged, moving like a shadow in the mist, and attacked with precision, aiming for the weak points she had studied earlier. Her blade sliced through the exposed underarm of Gorath's armor, leaving a deep gash. Gorath howled in pain, but Elise didn't give him time to recover. She ducked under another wild swing and ran to a nearby ridge, forcing Gorath to follow her. Each move, each feint was calculated to make him waste his energy. The Tyrak's rage and frustration were growing, and Elise could see it in his eyes. He wasn't used to this kind of fight. This was a battle of wits, not brute strength, and it was taking a toll on him. He was losing control. The second EMP device detonated as Gorath charged once more, knocking out his energy shield momentarily. His balance faltered, and he stumbled. Elise didn't hesitate. She struck again, slashing across his chest, and this time, the blow cut deep into the weakened plating of his armor. She moved back swiftly, never staying in one spot for long, keeping her distance as he roared in anger and pain. Gorath's movements became slower, more desperate. His arrogance had been his downfall. He believed that brute force would win this fight, but Elise had made him realize the limitations of that philosophy. He swung his massive blade one last time, but this time he was too slow. Elise darted in, disarming him with a quick strike to his wrist, then used his momentum to send him crashing into the rocky terrain. Breathing heavily, Elise stood over the fallen Tyrak warrior. Gorath was battered, his armor damaged beyond repair, and his pride shattered. The once feared champion of the Tyrak Dominion was now at her mercy. Elise didn't gloat, though. She wasn't here to humiliate him. She was here to win, to prove that humanity could rise above even the most impossible odds. Gorath struggled to rise, but he was too weak. Elise stood tall, unscathed, and with a calm determination in her eyes. She had won. The roar of the crowd, the alien spectators who had once laughed at her, was drowned out by the sound of her own heartbeat. She hadn't relied on strength or size to win this fight. She had relied on what made humanity unique: the ability to adapt, to think, to overcome. As Gorath slumped to the ground, defeated, the full weight of the battle settled in. Elise had proven not just her skill, but the strength of the human spirit. The Tyrak had underestimated humanity, but it would be a mistake they would never make again. The arena fell silent. The alien leaders, who had once viewed humanity as a fragile, insignificant race, now stared in disbelief at the defeated form of Gorath. The Tyrak champion, a being known for his immense strength and battle prowess, was lying on the ground, broken and battered. It was unthinkable to them that a single human could accomplish what had seemed impossible. The force and pride of the Tyrak Dominion, once feared across the galaxy, had been shattered by the very species they had mocked. Elise stood tall, her breath steady, her posture unwavering. She had not just defeated Gorath. She had made a statement. The implications of her victory rippled through the gathered crowd. What had once been considered a foolish and arrogant challenge had turned into an unprecedented display of human resilience. The Tyrak were no longer the unchallenged conquerors of the galaxy. The humans had just taken that mantle for themselves, and it had all come down to one soldier. Elise didn't bask in glory. She had never been one for fanfare. This wasn't about her, it was about humanity as a whole. It was about proving to the galaxy that the strength of a species wasn't defined by the size of its warriors or the power of its weapons, but by the spirit and determination of its people. She had fought not just for victory but for every human who had been underestimated, dismissed, or ignored. The once skeptical members of the Galactic Alliance now looked at humanity with new eyes. There was no longer any question about whether humans could hold their own. They had proven they could rise above any challenge, adapt to any situation, and fight with a relentless will. Elise's actions spoke for an entire species that had been ignored and dismissed for too long. The voice of humanity was now louder than ever before, and the galaxy could no longer afford to overlook them.